We're here with Danny Shine. I've been watching you for a few years now. You've been on, how long have you been on YouTube?
About 12 years, 13 years.
Oh, wow. Cool. Yeah. My friend Mateo first introduced me to you like several years ago. And I was really like impressed. I was like, also like, I felt like, oh man, that's exactly what I would love to be doing, what I wish more people did. But obviously it takes a certain kind of person to get out there and well, what you do is you go out and you kind of do a disruption, but it's more of a performance, isn't it?
Both.
So what are you eating, by the way?
Right. So apologies for eating on your show, but it's basically supper time for me, and I've recently changed my diet actually quite drastically, and before I share what I'm going to eat, I just want to make it really clear that I am not a nutritionist, and I have absolutely no credentials in that area. I'm quite ignorant in the area. I've heard ideas bandied around about not mixing certain foods, etc. But I really don't have any understanding much of the area of nutrition. And I'm just trying to work out what's best for me to eat. I cut out animal products. I just calling them that is also like interesting. But I cut out, eating animal things that come from or made of animals about I don't know, 7 or 8 years ago. I don't claim to know what anyone should be eating. I think it's a really difficult. The whole eating thing is just it's such a difficult thing to manage in this world that we live in, where we are, bombarded with awful messages and temptations for the worst possible quality food. I don't know what anyone should particularly eat, but I at the moment, my dinner, so for example, my dinner is kind of quite, it's quite a sort of a microcosm of the sort of my world in a way, because I've got lots of amazing fruits in here, right? Bananas and mango and grapes and strawberries and blueberries, and God only knows where they've all come from. I'm not bringing God into this actually, but you know what I mean. I have no idea where they come from, but they come from far away, right? And they're not expensive here in the UK if you know where to go. Not particularly expensive, but and they're delicious and amazing, and it's wonderful to have this as compared to what I've eaten in the past, which is things in bags and boxes and things, right, which I eat much less of, almost none. And at the same time, it's completely unsustainable, this whole way of living. It's just absolutely ridiculous. Even not eating animal products, the whole way of living is just so it's full of problems. The way we live, the way we consume, the way we behave towards each other, the way we behave towards animals, it's just so problematic. Even if you are, even if you don't indulge in using animals for anything. So that's what I'm having, and I'm also having a little bit of what I would describe as processed food, which I really hardly have any of at the moment. But for me, it's every day I'm trying to be on top of it and making sure that I'm not eating too much food, and that I'm trying to eat the best food, at least relatively, as I can. This is ice cream. It's Buja Buja ice cream, which you can get in the UK, and it's made out of cashew nuts, and it's got slightly better sweeteners in, maybe, right? Or if you think agave syrup is better, I don't know. But it's very sweet. I have a limited amount of it, and that's what I'm having for my dinner. And that kind of brings me briefly on to my experience is that when I let go, when I decided that's not for me, that meat and milk and eggs were not for me, I was kind of forced to look at other things. I mean, forced is a bad way of putting it, because it was nice to do that, right? It's so easy now. YouTube is absolutely jammed full of unbelievable recipes and ideas for everything. And so there's certain things that I make which are really simple, which are much healthier and cheaper, and don't use animals.
Why did you decide to stop eating animal products?
Well, I started being vegetarian maybe 15 years ago. I don't know. I suppose I'm on some kind of journey, trying to be more conscious and more aware, and I guess when I kind of realized that there was some problems, until I was 40, I had very little awareness of the problems, ethical problems of the way animals were farmed and just the whole eating of meat. But then because I sort of got into all sorts of, I don't know how to describe it, but metaphysical things or spiritual things. I don't know how to describe it. I find those words quite tricky, but whatever things. Yeah. So I got into these things, and it felt right to become vegetarian. Then my son was like 7 or 8 years old, and he watched some of these horrible films, and so did I. And he went vegan, and I thought, I can't carry on just eating fish and meat and all that in front of him. Not meat, but fish. And I think I was out of pescatarian at some stage. So I decided to cut it out. And so that's kind of why I think that I think that factory farming is just an absolute aberration. It's unbelievable. I find it difficult to know how anybody can not be misanthropic just because of factory farming. It's just crazy, and I don't even know. Sorry,
As bad as factory farming is, I mean, just what do you think like about killing animals in general? Just like, let's say, humanely raised they spend their life in the pasture.
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, one of the things that I do in my public talks, which I'm going to do now, is if I use a very simple, I would describe it as a tool, really. And I use lots of tools in my day to try to improve my day, from meditation to reading to calling people to yoga. I write a plan for myself. I use all sorts of different tools to try and improve my behavior and my life. And one of the tools that I use a lot in public speaking, if I remember to, and some of my videos contain that, and I'm going to do that right now, is when I remember to, I just sit and contemplate or meditate for 30 seconds to a minute on that question. Yeah. Rather than just give you something that I may have thought out beforehand and just let it roll off my tongue. So I'm just going to do that for a moment.
Sure.
Whilst I'm doing that, maybe people who are watching can do the same thing. So yeah, I'm just going to close my eyes for 30 seconds or a minute.
Outside.
what I came up with is that in a way, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter what I think about it. But I can tell you that I can't imagine myself killing an animal or extracting its milk, or maybe the eggs I could imagine myself taking from a hen, but but the rest of it, I personally I can't imagine, unless I was literally about to die and I thought that it was in my best interest to stay or in whatever, then I might kill an animal for food, but I can't imagine doing it. And therefore, whether I think it's, right or wrong for other people to kill animals is neither here nor there, because I can't stop them doing what they're doing. So it's like, I don't, there's not much point in having the argument. That's the first thing that comes up in my mind. The second thing is that, since I've come across antinatalism, which and I don't really like the term. I prefer to use the term I've sort of made up, well, with inspiration from another guy. I basically try and use this term. I've started experimenting with the term preventionism, which is so I would describe as as the valuing of, somewhere high up in the in values would be the prevention of unnecessary suffering. Yeah, that's what I think is probably one of the highest values. Yeah, so the strange thing about that is once you enter once I found antinatalism, or what I call preventionism, yeah, all sorts of moral questions sort of come up, and if you keep asking those questions, you get to all sorts of really difficult questions to ask, but in a way they're all just theoretical, and they don't, it doesn't really matter what I think. Well, you say, yeah, I may have a following, but firstly, I have a following of 60,000 people, right? Which is not a lot, right? Secondly, yeah. So what? So the 60,000 people are going to, Danny Shine, just some random bloke, right, has decided that his opinion is it's wrong to murder. I don't even like, but it's wrong to end the life of a sentient being for food, even if that sentient being had a really okay life. Yeah. So I believe that. So what's going to happen? Do you think anybody of the 60,000 people is gonna who thinks it's okay and they themselves do it? Yeah. So in other words, out of 60,000 people, how many of them actually kill animals for food, right? And how many of those?
Well, they pay people to.
Okay, they pay people to. So what? You know what? even if I, there's lots of reasons to choose a plant-based diet. It's not only, the moral question, but it's like, it's a difficult question, because once you get into, I don't know how useful the question is, because once you get into preventionism, the idea of preventing unnecessary suffering, then you've got a really strange kind of paradox, because by, we firstly, we claim that or I would claim that it's not necessary to bring people into existence. Yeah. And therefore, by preventing someone from coming to existence, you're preventing unnecessary suffering. Yeah. And therefore, having a vasectomy, for example, is a really great thing to do. Right?
Have you had one?
I haven't actually, but I can't really talk too much about that, because it's also to do with my partner, right? So that's the excuse I use anyway.
You are married.
I'm married, yeah.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you before I forget or we move away from this topic. Um, you're happily married. Would you agree with that statement?
Yeah, very
Yeah.
happy.
So I wanted to know what your idea is of a happy marriage and what your advice is for people to have a happy long-term monogamous relationship, because just from my own experience, which obviously is just anecdotal, but I do see a lot of problems happening in society where and this is for myself included, where monogamy seems to be a very, very difficult thing for people of my generation and younger. And we see a lot of obviously we see like half of all marriages fail, maybe more, maybe like 60%. So yeah, that's what I wanted to pick your brain about that for a bit.
Okay. Okay, so again, I'm going to think about that because that's a big question. Yeah. And I'm going to invite everybody to just join me as well. To just like meditate, close your eyes if you're not, obviously if you're driving a car, don't do that. But if you're not, just close your eyes and kind of meditate on this, on the idea of long-term monogamous relationships and what what it means to you, the viewer. What's been your experience? What would you have to say? Have you been, are there any people watching, have they been married for many years? Have they not? Have they been divorced? Just meditate on that, and then I'll come back to you. I mean, the problem with your question is that, I could probably have a chat with you for a long time about marriage. I could have another chat with you about monogamy. They have that. Firstly, every marriage is different. Every relationship is different. And monogamy is a whole big subject in and of itself. So I think my wife would probably laugh if she heard you ask, or anybody ask, what's your advice for a long and happy marriage? It's been tricky and challenging, and we disagree about a lot. A lot of fundamentals we see differently from each other. She completely disagrees with the antinatalism, or with it. Yeah, she wants to have grandchildren, and she says our children are the best thing that ever happened to her. And she really doesn't like, if she walked in now, she'd say, oh God, not another one, not another discussion about antinatalism, right? And she's religious, I'm not. But she is also, in my case, if I'm going to be personal about it to some extent, she's extremely tolerant, as you probably work out. She is funny. She is kind and generous and caring and forgiving. So like, you know, that is, so my only, you know, the only thing that comes to mind, and it's not like I was that conscious about all these things when I got married, but you know, is that people shouldn't fall for the you know, don't fall for the sex thing, right? It's you know, yeah, it can distort all sorts of things, the sex or the looks or the, you know, whatever. It's the qualities that are important. And you know, she's got fantastic qualities, and she's quite easy to live with. But not everybody around me has that experience. You know, it's very, very hard to live with anybody, you know, for long times or even short periods of time for most people. So yeah, you have to be, you know, fortunate and thoughtful and think about what you really want in a partner and what you have to offer as a person yourself. We do something that I would, you know, that I've always wanted to kind of offer to people, but I've never got down to it as a service, not for money. I was thinking like actually once I should offer different services to people and only do it free for antinatalists, right? So this is an idea that I'd like to actually, I don't know if I'm putting it out there on this particular video. Yeah, I'd be happy to offer you some training. If you're antinatalist, I'll do it for free. Otherwise, I'll charge, right? It's an exercise that I do with my wife on a regular basis, which is we do a role swap. So she kind of pretends to be me, and I pretend to be her. I just imagine that I'm her, and she imagines that she's me. She's me. It's not the thing is that you kind of usually need a little bit of help doing it, because otherwise it very easily turns into a, you know, into a tool you use against your partner, right? But it's not that. It's you're just getting into the world of your partner, and you become your partner in a discussion. And if you have discussions that, if you're in the middle of an argument and then you swap, then it just dissipates. It's quite funny and it dissipates if you do it well. So we do that, and that's really, really helpful. It's a little tool that we use. So I can tell you that. But you know, what can I tell people about relationships?
Well, I wanted to say, before my last relationship fell apart, towards the end, I started using your, you know, 30-second technique. And I mean, it did help tremendously with a lot. I mean, too little, too late, but it did help a lot. It was a very powerful tool, and I don't use it as often as I should, but I try and remember it when I can, because yeah, it really works in a lot of situations, not just with relationships, but I see you do it when you're doing activism, um, and yeah, especially when things are just getting heated, people are getting too worked up. Um,
Yeah.
you know, you can feel that, like when I'm confronting someone, or even just not confronting, but debating or challenging them on something, you can kind of feel that their energy, that butterflies in the stomach, in the solar plexus, and you're like, that's the perfect time to say, hey, like, I'm gonna take 30 seconds here, you know. So yeah, I mean, just thank you for that. But yeah, I also this is kind of getting back to the food thing. I just found it interesting. I remember in one of your videos you were talking about how your wife had some health issues, and you guys sort of went to this, um, I don't know if they were like a nutritionist or a dietitian, but
Yeah.
they put her
Yeah.
on, you know, like a raw food
Yeah.
regiment,
Yeah,
right?
a
Protocol.
juice fast. You went on a juice fast.
How long was the juice fast?
I think it was about 30 days.
Okay. Have you ever done anything like
I've
that
not I've
yourself?
not gone that far. I've not gone that
Yeah.
far. No.
Are you familiar with John Rose or any
Yes,
of those
I am.
people? Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he
Yeah.
do you want to just describe him very briefly for people watching that haven't heard of him?
Oh, he's a raw foodist.
Hmm.
Calls himself a vegan. I mean, to what extent, I don't know, but he claims he doesn't need any animal products. And he's been raw foodist for over 30 years, and
Yeah.
he's a very fit gentleman.
Hmm.
He does what he calls he calls himself a wellness coach.
Hmm.
Um, I've done sessions with him, and
How
I
well
did
then?
his protocol, and I found it very helpful.
Oh, wow. Amazing. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, I know. I'm definitely not completely raw. I'm probably
Neither
about
am I
I'm probably
anymore,
about
but
50% at the moment, which is really good compared to what I used to do.
mhm.
Yeah.
But so that what your wife did,
Hmm.
that helped her, right? She actually,
Well,
in the video that I watched, you said
yeah.
it,
Yeah. Excuse
some
me.
things were
Um,
overcome, right?
hmm. She well, it's difficult because you never know what causes what. So I'm not saying that there's any scientific evidence. I don't know if there is. But I know that her experience was that she had very low blood platelets, and she went on 30-day juice fast, and she also was they put them on very high steroids, which are awful. And then she like tapered those off, and then she had this juice diet, and she managed to get her levels up. It's difficult to know that one caused the other, but I do think that it just makes sense to me that what we eat and how much we eat of it is really quite important for both mental health and physical health, definitely. So like now at the moment, my eating is it's only one day at a time, because there's so many temptations in the world of food around, but my eating is quite I plan what I eat. I stick to certain amounts. I stick to certain times if I can. I have gaps between eating. I don't just eat and eat all day, which I used to do. And that really has helped me. It's helped me feel a lot better physically, but also has helped me a lot mentally. Um, yeah. So
Do
I
you
do.
exercise as well?
I do, yeah. And I, yeah, recently I'm doing more yoga, more Pilates. I do a lot of cycling. I do some cardio. Um, I'm going to I'm going to a personal trainer actually, who's a friend of mine as well, next week, just to make sure that I'm doing what I need to be doing for my age, because I'm 55, and you have to really step up when you get to my age,
Right.
just to be well, and there's no guarantee, of course, even if you do, but
Well, you're certainly doing more than most, which is, you know, it's pretty good. And like you said, there's just a lot of temptation in this world, and uh, just we're kind of, it's hard to get out of get away from the phone, get away from, the junk food, the whatever distraction might be there.
yeah,
you
100%.
know,
It's I mean, cross addictions basically that's the epidemic. That's the real epidemic. Addiction is absolutely,
I
and the whole system. I wanted to make a film about this. I never got down to it. I wrote about this a bit. The whole system is like thrives on addiction. You know, you think about most most corporations are survival. You know, their whole, you know, all their profits are based on addiction. So they encourage it. Yeah.
Absolutely. I'd say that's like most of my lifestyle is to support whatever, yeah, like I like clothes, I like music, I like, I like a lot of material things. I mean, a lot of expensive food. Believe it or not, fruit is pretty expensive. I mean, not that that's necessarily in line with addiction, but also like going out places with friends, that whole lifestyle, being social in general for some reason costs money, a
Well,
lot of
you see,
money.
it doesn't actually, it doesn't have to. I can certainly get it down. I mean, like, for example, you know, one of the many benefits of improving my diet, which, by the way, I can't do on my own. I do it with the help of other people. I just can't do it on my own. It's just too difficult, right? But one of the benefits is that I'm less and less interested in eating somewhere and eating out, because I don't, you know, there's so few restaurants that serve food that is as good as the food I serve at home. So why would I go, and why do I want to go there? Because they're all based on addiction. They're all trying to tempt you. So if I go to a bloody restaurant, it's like I have to, you know, I have to make an effort to avoid all the rubbish that they're trying to sell. So,
Right.
yeah. So in
Yeah.
my case, I don't need to go out. I don't need to go out. I can have people around, or I can go to a park, or I can, you know, go
No,
on.
you're absolutely right. I guess it's more of a convenience factor, you know. That's a big part of it. And to eat, especially if you're eating a raw food diet or even just a high raw food diet, well, for
Yeah.
me anyway, I bring bags of fruit with me everywhere I go. I'm like that guy. Every time I show up a place, I have, like my bag full of fruit, but also I need salads. If I want to stay eating mostly raw food and not indulge in whatever, vegan restaurant food, I have to make these giant salads, and that's like kind of an inconvenience in terms of schlepping it everywhere. So I'm not trying to turn people off from that lifestyle. It's definitely the way to be, in my opinion. It's just I'm sort of just lamenting, about. I
I
guess
get,
there's
I get
there's
it.
much worse problems to have, but yeah, no, and you mentioned you would mention your like your mental health and doing stuff to improve that. I know during some of your speeches, your outreaches, you talk about like psychedelics, mushrooms, stuff like that. I don't know if that's one of the things that you've used. What if you can talk about that a little bit, your experience with that, plus any like stuff you did that doesn't involve drugs. I mean, you talked about it a little bit. You said you meditate, you said you write things down, but uh, you know, if you want to go into that at all.
Okay. So I'm going to just have another
Sure,
break.
sure.
Okay, so I don't know. I just feel I haven't prepared to answer this question. I think it's better for me to answer the question about psychedelics and drugs when I've really thought about it and write about it, maybe. So I just don't want to say, I don't feel like answering that part. I
Sure.
mean, my son actually is, his dissertation, he's just finished university, and his dissertation was all about the use of psychedelics in medical settings, in mental health and physical health. And he did a bunch of research into it all, and he's really interested in it all, and I'm kind of interested in it. I think the world's going to pot, right? The world's going downhill, and I think they should immediately. But I mean, what they're going to then should I could imagine that it would be so beneficial if, and it's not going to happen, I don't think. But if they, instead of spending all that money on vaccines, they spent money on finding things that make people feel better, make people feel happy, make people feel connected, make people feel loving, make people feel whatever, all the
What
things.
do you think about SSRIs for that?
Again, I'm not a
Oh,
psychiatrist.
you're not prepared
No,
to talk about it, or
I can tell you, what I think about it, but I don't have any experience taking them. And I don't have, I've really got so little knowledge about them. I've only just heard things, so, and I don't, so you can't take what I say, people can't take what I say as informed.
sure,
Yeah.
sure.
And, I've heard it bandied around that, there's the evidence that SSRIs are better than placebos is scant, right? And that they have, that they sometimes have really unpleasant side effects, including suicidal ideation. I don't know if that's true.
Right.
I don't have the experience of it. But I do know that, never mind SSRIs, they're making all that money on SSRIs, fine, right, whatever. They can have their whole discussion about it. But what I do know is that there are compounds out there, like MDMA, that bring out the love in a person, right? There are compounds out there that make people happy. There are things out there that, that make people question their own egos, that have, that brings them to an ego death, whatever that is, whether it does or doesn't, but that people speak about that. There are things out there like psychedelics as well that, that many people report helps them with depression. Again, there's a lot of research about that now. Yeah. So all these amazing things, and and that, imagine if they'd have spent $1 trillion on those, yeah, and given them to all the people who are struggling, right, in all these areas, and enhance their thinking and enhance their enhance their lives in all these types of ways that so many people are looking for in these drugs that have been deemed illegal. Imagine what we could have come up with. Imagine if we got the best minds to create drugs that, to manipulate and create drugs that, take the good things out of MDMA, the good things out of cannabis, the good things out of mushrooms, the good parts out of, maybe some different combinations, because nothing works in a uniform way, or different people have different experiences. Yeah. But what if they, got their chemical engineers to create different things and take the bad bits out and keep the good bits in and put them all together and create amazing, enhancing things that could help people. I'm sure they could have come up with amazing, and why, the fact that they're illegal is, again, it's irrelevant what I believe about it, because it is as it is. So there's not much point in, even in speaking about it. But the fact that it's illegal is just, that is the crime. The criminals are the people who make that into a crime. They're the criminals.
Right. I mean, but you say like
they're harming, the people that make up the law and police that law, the judges, about, they are harming millions of people, who've done no harm to anybody else, right? It's crazy,
Right.
absolutely crazy.
You say that there's, and I agree with you. You say that there's really like, not, correct me if I'm wrong. I think you just said you don't feel like there's much point in speaking about it, but do you really believe that? Because like you go out on the street and you make a big show out of it, and you reach a lot of people, man.
Yeah,
You
but
know,
I'm also skeptical. I would say that I out of all the labels that I've called myself, even being an antinatalist, whatever that is, I don't feel that comfortable. The only thing that I feel very comfortable and sure that I am, and that is skeptical, right? I'm skeptical of life itself, and I'm skeptical of the human mind. I'm very skeptical about my own mind, because I know that some of the thoughts I have are literally crazy, right? They're crazy, and they're the addictive thoughts. They're crazy thoughts around addictions. Yeah. So I already know that there are certain thoughts I have are crazy, and therefore, and I am aware of how much the mind is malleable and how much cognitive bias there is. So I'm just very, very skeptical about my own mind, and I'm skeptical about life itself. And therefore, and I'm also skeptical about, I certainly in the past few months, I've been examining the idea of like, am I trying to change the things that actually I can't change? Yeah. And am I avoiding trying to change the things that I can, by doing that, by trying to change the things I can't change? And, okay, it's very nice, the police, I was whatever authority, I'm making these points, but the point is, I can't change the police, I can't change the government, I can't change Fauci, I can't change the FDA, I can't change the
well,
CDC,
okay. So
I can't change
are you
government, I can't
familiar with
change
Mike
anything.
Passio?
Yes.
All right. So like his whole spiel is being our own media,
Mm-hmm.
right? And um, the only reason, the way we reach the tipping point is that if we actually make the effort to be the media, that the alternative media. And I mean, I think that to a certain extent, or you wouldn't be like out here doing what you're doing. It's the great work, right? I mean, it is
Yeah, I'm skeptical
creating
about
that.
that. It's all very nice that you're saying it's the great work, yeah. And it feels nice, yeah, for about 5 seconds, right? But after that, I mean, if you ask put it this way, if you ask my closest friends and my closest family, yeah, none of them watch my videos.
Right.
They don't think it's important work at all. Otherwise, they'd watch them. So, you know, really, if I'm honest about it, a lot of it is ego.
Ego. Yeah.
Um, you know, um, so, and I've been thinking quite a lot about it, which is why I haven't put out so many videos recently. Um, you know, so am I speaking about, in a way, like veganism, for example? Yeah. I'm sorry. I kind of recently came to think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong with this, but that I am doubtful whether my own personal um, abstention from eating animals, from eating meat, milk, fish, or whatever, I don't think that's probably saved any animals, because of the sheer, you know.
I think if you were the only person in the world that were doing it, maybe, you know, maybe not. But I just disagree. I think that it creates a bubble, and the bubble gets bigger and bigger. Like I know
Okay, but
I had when I first went vegan, I had the same people told me the same thing, but the number of other people I've helped or influenced to go vegan, and then they've influenced, like, it's like Ishmael, you know, you teach 100 people, and each one of those people teaches 100 people, you know. But yeah, I mean, I can also understand your perspective, but I think that you have made a difference. I think that you have changed people's minds, and I appreciate your skepticism. You said you had some crazy thoughts. Would you, you know, no pressure, but do you mind sharing one or two of those thoughts?
Um, okay. So sometimes I'll, in the past, at the moment, I'm not, I don't have these thoughts, but in the past, I might have tried to commit to eating healthily, right? And then I'll get up in the morning having had far too much and rubbish the night before, and I will promise myself, okay, this today I'm gonna, you know, today I'm gonna, that thought in of itself is just insane, because my experience, sorry, just my experience is that that doesn't happen. You know, that I regularly do that and it never happens. So why am I believe that's silly? Well, it's just insanity, because, you know, doing the same thing over again and expecting something different to happen is one of the definitions of insanity. And then I've got that, and then what would happen is that, so I'd expect that, you know, this day is going to be different. I'd go downstairs in the morning and I'd find something to eat. I don't know, I'd see a biscuit or something that was there, right? I don't really have that kind of stuff in the house very much, but sometimes it appears, right? And so I'll say, oh, go on, I can't stop myself. I have the biscuit. And then my mind will say, right, that's it. Because you've now, you've now not, you've now had this biscuit and you haven't had the, you haven't had whatever it was that you should have had, a beetroot. Now I'm going to eat a whole packet of biscuits. That is insane behavior. And that is insane thinking.
So the addiction leads to insanity.
Yeah.
Yeah. I, you know, I briefly have, flirted with some 12-step programs. And yeah, that's one of the things, they always say, is that you are not sane when you're living with, like, for your addiction.
Yeah.
And I've experienced the same thing with a lot of things in my life. And there's a level of self-deception. And you make promises to yourself that you can't keep, or to others. You don't even have to say I promise, but just to say that you're going to do something. And in the moment, you really mean it, because you want it. You do really emotionally mean it. But yeah, it's so that's why, I think it's, to have that integrity is very difficult for most people. And I think people put it, people expect too much of each other. Before I forget, I had all these questions I want to ask you. I just like to wing them. I didn't write them down. I know that was irresponsible of me, but I want to try and ask them as I remember them. Was there something, like, do you feel like something happened in your childhood that may have led you to be, or just any number of things that led you to be the person you are now, that is different than what a lot of people experience? Because obviously you have, like, people like us, I put us in a similar category. I agree with you on most things, which is pretty rare. And I find that we have a very niche, way of thinking or philosophy. So yeah, basically my question is, what do you think it is that may have led you to that, stemming from, experiences earlier in your life?
I have to break again.
Sure.
I'd invite everybody to, like, just meditate on this for yourself. Like, you know, how is your life now influenced by experiences in your childhood? You know, everyone can think about that. So I'll have a think about that too. I mean, I don't have a great recall of my life, my early life. I don't think that I experienced what you know, I didn't really experience abuse, if that's what you mean. But you know, there were other I mean, just being alive is traumatic. Going to school is traumatic, really, when you think about it. You know, and I went to and I got sent to a boarding school when I was 10, which was very unusual in my community. And I can't, you know, like when my kids were 10, when my children, my offspring were 10, you know, I couldn't imagine, I would never ever send them to a boarding school, right? So, you know, but that was when I was 10, but then there was when I was younger than that as well. And what came up for me when I was just sitting there is that, you know, that's in a way, that's something that there's various ways of discovering if you want to discover that. So, you know, a lot of people go to therapy to try to work out that and they, you know, and then there's the question of, well, does that help? You know, does it really help if you know that, or if, yeah, and it can do, and it doesn't necessarily. And
have you gone to therapy?
Yeah, of course. I mean, yeah, absolutely. I'd be embarrassed to say I hadn't gone to therapy. Like,
Okay, yeah.
like how, you know, only someone that's, I assume, I don't know, you know, only someone that's like really, I mean, what kind of awareness can you have if you don't go to therapy, you never go to any therapy? What kind of awareness will you have about yourself if you don't at least think you might need it?
Right.
Because the people who don't think they need it are the ones that need it the most. But
Right.
you know, but I'm not in therapy at the moment, but I am in I am in certain 12-step programs. You know, I'm not allowed to, you know, as part of agreeing to be part of the group is anonymity, right? Which is a wonderful concept. And therefore I'm not going to tell you which ones I'm in or which ones I go to, but I am eligible for a lot of them. And there's one, for example, that most people are now eligible for, which is Technology Anonymous. And you can go to meetings online, which is a bit bizarre. But yeah, so I do, you know, I am in and out of, you know, I am kind of involved to a certain extent, but the whole thing about anonymity is that is also about because there's nobody, there are no stars in the 12-step program. There are no, you know, it doesn't make any difference whether you've been in the program for 1 day or for 30 years. It's irrelevant. Nobody's above or below anybody else. So yeah, I just wanted to make that really clear, because, and that the good thing about that, it means that, you know, if I'm having success with the program in whatever field I am, and then I relapse, yeah, I don't have to put on some kind of show to everyone, say, oh, look, there's you know, there's the golden boy from Alcoholics Anonymous. I can tell you that the one thing I'm definitely not is an alcoholic, so I can pretend it's Alcoholics Anonymous. But, you know, so the good thing about the anonymity is that there's no one that has to keep up appearances in the 12 steps. And because if you relapse, then you relapse, and whatever it is. So but the 12-step program, one of the steps, and by the way, I've discovered only recently that there is a whole a whole kind of there's a whole lot of there's a genre of people, there's a group of people that have what they call secular anonymous meetings. They call it secular, but it's basically for people who are agnostic, free thinkers, or atheists. Yeah. Because the 12-step program is really quite God heavy. And I, you know, personally, I think it's part of this conversation, you need in my antinatalism, with, you know, if I can't see any, I cannot see any evidence for there being a benevolent creator. I can't see it. I just don't understand. To me, it seems that whatever created physical reality and sentience seems really malevolent. So I, you know, I don't really understand why people, I mean, I used to do it myself, so I kind of understand, but why people praise the creator of this madness.
Totally agreed.
So
I'm agnostic myself, but, you know,
right.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if
The
there
12-step
is
program
one,
now,
then
sorry, I was just saying the 12-step
go ahead.
program have got, I mean, Alcoholics Anonymous has got 500 secular meetings in the world, which is, you know, still a small amount of compared, you know, percentage, but a lot of meetings. And so that's a really interesting development in the 12-step program. But in the 12-step program, I was going to say, step 4 is about you know, taking a really good look at your life from the earliest days. And when
Kind
you
of
do
interesting you just mentioned that, because one of the things I was going to ask was, how did you deal with step 4? Because that's where I kind of stopped, you know. Yeah.
why did you stop?
I think I got overwhelmed. And I also was kind of telling myself, like, I think I regressed, and I decided that this wasn't my problem. Probably is, but, you know.
What do you mean
But
you
what,
regressed?
well, like, you know, the first step is admitting that you're an addict, right?
Oh, see, got it.
And with the particular, you know, 12-step program I was in, I kind of wanted, you know, I was a bit arrogant. I kind of say to myself, I'm not, you know, I don't want to be one of these people, you know.
Right. Yeah, but that, I mean,
Yeah.
that to me, that just sounds like you were avoiding, you know, you're avoiding step 4.
Well, it is.
Because it doesn't even matter if you are, it doesn't matter. Step 4 it doesn't really matter whether everyone would benefit from doing step 4. Everyone
Oh,
would
of course,
benefit
of
looking at
course.
their lives, whether they are an addict or whatever that means or not, right? And we're all addicted to something. So even if you weren't addicted to that thing, yeah,
Yeah.
you know, it would have
It would
been,
have been the work I should
well,
have
you
done.
could still, well, nah, should. I mean, I would just tell you, if there's one word that I would wipe out from, that I've tried to wipe out from my language, and I don't succeed always, but it should. I mean, it's just such a stupid word, because basically what it means is it's the opposite of acceptance. Yeah. Nah, you shouldn't have done it, whatever. You didn't do it for whatever reason, you didn't do it. But you could still do it. Yeah, you could still do it. And you know, if you think now, actually, yeah, I was running away from it and it would benefit me, then just do it. You know, you can do it on your own, but probably better just do it with someone else. Just find someone and just go through the questions and go through your life. Just have a look at your life and have an honest look at your,
5 minutes a day.
yeah,
So it is. Yeah, 5
yeah.
minutes.
Yeah.
So did you have siblings? Were you close with your parents? How was the whole family dynamic?
Okay, so my parents, was I close with them? That's an interesting question. Well, I mean, when I was growing up, you know, my dad was quite authoritarian. He's religious, and you know, they were in an era where it was fine to hit children. You know, I didn't get hit that much, but still got hit. Um, and I was really belligerent, and you know, I'm sure that I got sent to boarding school because I was really difficult and belligerent. You know, I can put all sorts of reasons for it, but I was, you know, and I was really quite nasty at times to my siblings. But now we have an amazing relationship. I've got two brothers and two sisters actually, which is far too much. And as I said to my dad, you realize, Dad, you are responsible for the death of 20 people so far. That's all his children and their children. I say, you got.
Can't wait to use that line on my parents now. No, but
Said,
my,
Dad,
my
you have.
brothers don't act.
What's that?
My brothers actually, none of us are having kids, so
Oh,
that's
wonderful.
yeah.
I said to my dad, that is a dangerous thing you've got between your legs, mate. Look, it killed 20 people already. Basically killed 20 people.
Were they religious?
Very religious, like Orthodox, very Orthodox, not ultra Orthodox, because that's a whole new level of madness, but they were very Orthodox, yeah.
So what's the what is their response to your preventionism?
Oh, my father's already 83. My mother's no longer alive, and I only came to it, well, you know, 5 years ago, and she'd been long gone by then. Well, 6, 7 years, I think. But my dad is like, you know, he's like just very dismissive of, oh, shut up with that nonsense. You know, that's his attitude to anything that he doesn't really want to talk about.
Right. I find it interesting, like just that, you know, with religion and like I don't know, you think that these people want to do some really deep thinking, philosophical discussion.
Not at all. So many people, absolutely not. It's the last thing they want to do. Because if they do that, then they'll figure out that there's, you know, not all of it is quite true, is it? Yeah.
Right.
That's
Right.
what they want to do because they're getting the benefit out of it. You know, it has a lot of benefits. Part of a community. I mean, you know, the Jewish Orthodox Jewish community has got a lot of great things about it. People really care about each other. People, you know, that they have great social circles. They, you know, every Saturday, especially amongst the Orthodox, every Saturday they, you know, they have go to each other's houses. They don't use technology.
Right.
It's a real peaceful, restful day. You know, there's a lot of real benefit about it. They don't want to think about it. No, very few people want to think about it.
Right. Right. Um so I wanted to get a bit into your activism, talk about what you do on, you know, you go out on the street and you know maybe you want to describe it and explain the different topics that you discuss. You kind of call it a performance, like an art performance in a way.
Art performance, whatever.
I mean, you know, how
I mean, to be honest with
I
you, it's
sort of
like
see it as like a
I'm not sure that I can be bothered to talk about it. I'll tell you why.
okay.
It's like, you know, I just get the viewers to go to my, you know, if you're on
Sure.
my YouTube channel, then it's silly, and you're familiar with what I do. Then what am I going to start explaining what I do? And if they're on your YouTube channel, I still don't want to explain what I do because there's, you know, it's not really about explaining what I do. That's for them to work out what I do by watching it and, you know, working out themselves. So just
Right.
go to, you know, the YouTube channel. I'll also give you another channel on a different platform. because of YouTube censorship, and just generally thinking that Google is basically an excuse that allows human beings to commit terrible crimes against humanity. Really, Google is Google allows. I mean, who's the CEO of Google? Do you know off the top of your head?
I don't.
Okay, so
it's not the Facebook guy, Zuckerberg. It's not Zuckerberg,
no.
right? No, it's someone else.
Yeah, it's one of the other guys. But anyway, the CEO of Google is a prolific criminal. He he's involved in stalking, mass stalking. If we did that, if my wife would stalk me like Google does, keep a record of all my emails, look up my emails, sell my emails to the government, right? I'd have to put in jail if he did that to me, right? Terrible crime. And that's what he is doing under the guise of some word, Google, which is not real. Yeah.
Right.
So this is going to go on YouTube, and it's a problem, just like all the other we're faced with. Yeah. So I do put it on another channel as well, but yes,
which you post the link to in your videos.
A video, post a link in this video, and then people can find out for themselves.
Right. Do you feel comfortable talking about your position on the medical mandates, the tyranny that's kind of going on? I mean, one of the things that I felt so great about watching your content is that you're vegan, you're you call it preventionist, I just call it antinatalist. You're also I believe you're an anarchist, am I correct? Or I don't know how you would label yourself, but you seem to espouse anarcho philosophy.
Well,
and I'm like,
again, I prefer to call myself a skeptic, because you see the clever thing, right, which I didn't work this out myself, I just kind of picked it up, but the clever thing, the clever person asks the questions. So because the problem with being an anarchist is that an anarchist, it then leaves the person open to having to answer, well, how exactly are we going to live together, right? How are we going to do this together, right? Whereas I prefer to keep focusing on the absolute insanity and criminality of the system we live in, right? So in other words, it's like saying, in other words, I don't know, I don't know if I'm a socialist or a cat or whatever, but if I was, if I was in the 1940s, I would stick focusing on, well, Hitler's doing this, right? And that is not okay. It doesn't matter what, what the solution is, but that isn't the solution, right? So to me, I wouldn't say I'm an anarchist, but I'm extremely skeptical about the idea of states. I'm extremely skeptical about the idea of government and corporations. And my skepticism.
Are you skeptical about like rights in general?
I'm even skeptical about rights. I am, yes, but before that, I'm, my skepticism about governments and I kind of, again, I have ideas about how this can be conveyed in films and in clever media, but well-made media. But my problem with them, my questions are, they're quite logical and I can explain them. It's not just I'm just sort of vaguely skeptical. It's based on what I learned from Lark and Rose, which is very simple, a very simple idea. I'm even skeptical about that because I think, because I wonder whether there is such a thing as morality, and everything can be explained in all sorts of different ways. But, it's kind of just the idea that nobody has a right to do anything that we don't all have a right to do, and putting a uniform on or voting for something, voting for someone to steal something or voting for someone to harm somebody that hasn't done any harm. It doesn't matter how many people vote for it. as far as I'm concerned, nobody is, it's illegitimate, because it's just
Right.
very simple. It's not okay to do it. If it's not okay to do something, then it's not okay to do it, whether you wear a green suit, pair of beige underpants, or a black outfit that comes up with very nice polished shoes, because somebody wrote it somewhere, or because the majority of the morons, right, voted for it. Yeah, it doesn't make any difference.
Right. It's like, why can't I start my whole, why can't I start my own security company, and we hand out our card and say, oh, call us instead of 911, and like build our own building that has jail cells or whatever, like that. Why did it, it's like, yeah, it's weird. It's very it's all just like a sort of an act.
Yeah,
But yeah,
and it's even worse than that. It's even worse than that, because I could tolerate like, I could tolerate that if they were only dealing with things that we all could do. So in other words, it's okay for me to defend myself, therefore it's okay for me to get someone to do that for me. Yeah, so I can tolerate that kind of thing. So like, if someone came at me with it started yielding a knife, I think it would be okay to lock that person up, right? I think it would be okay for me to lock that person up. Therefore, I think it's okay for me to get someone else to lock them up. And then you've got a whole discussion about, what.
Right, but then, but
hold on, but
paying that person voluntarily, right?
Yeah. Yeah, okay,
I mean, it would be, rather than the centralized.
Yeah,
that's the whole thing. He doesn't say, okay, there shouldn't be security. It's just that it shouldn't be centralized. It should be on a free market.
Yeah, but then you've got a whole other problem of money, and that is a whole another big issue, which is why I'm saying I wouldn't call myself an anarchist. Firstly, I just don't have enough understanding and knowledge of politics and of systems, etc. Right? I wouldn't call myself that. But what I think is important to focus on is the absolute insanity and murderous and deceitful and downright evil nature of the system which we live in, and the totally insane, the illegitimacy of the state, the illegitimacy of many of the laws. And so, so therefore, an example of that is the mandates, right? Which is very, very simple, right? It's very simple to expose it as being nonsense, right? Which is, if you came round to my house with a needle and you said to me, look, I'm sorry, if you don't take this medication now, I'm gonna make you lose your job. I believe I have the right to defend myself. I believe that what you're doing is insane. It's blackmail. It's terrible. Absolutely terrible crime. Imagine if some neighbor did that. Imagine if your neighbor I've got doctors that live around the corner. I've got a doctor living literally around the corner from here. She's the head of the vaccination program in our local area. Yeah. I have a very different view about vaccinations than she does. I don't really care to share it here, because I don't have enough knowledge to be able to try and influence anybody else. So I don't care to share it here, but I have a different view to her, that's for sure.
But she's all to have read.
She's gun ho. I'll come to say she's gun. If she came round to my house with a needle and spoke to my 15-year-old son, yeah, and managed to persuade him to get a vaccine, right, against our will, I would regard her as an absolute nutcase, It should be locked up, right? So to me, I don't see the difference between that and what the so-called government are doing. It's just the word government allows these people to do things which are just unbelievable, terrible crimes, right, en masse, to people that if it was done by an individual, yeah, you would think that's a person should be locked up. And a similar thing applies to drugs. Imagine if your friend came round to you and found some, I don't know, anything really on you, but I don't know, let's say MDMA, right? Found some MD. Imagine just some stranger came around to you, found some MDMA, and put you in a van and told everyone you're a bad person and locked you up for years. I mean, what kind of person would do that? So how is that? How is that, even allowed? How is this whole thing? How, and that, so for me, rather than saying I'm an anarchist, right, which puts the onus on me to find a solution to what would happen when you stop, when we say, no, okay, you can't do that anymore. You can't force us to mandate the vaccines. You can't force, you can't force people to not have drugs. You can't, you can't do anything that we don't all have the power to do. I don't have to explain what will replace that. We'll find a replacement for that. But what I have to do is focus and just remind everybody that this is absolute nonsense. This criminal behavior and the mandating of the vaccines. Yeah, the mandating of the vaccines is an example of why the whole thing is so screwed up, because they can just do whatever they want. There's no moral, there doesn't seem to be any system in place to check out, well, is this legitimate? Is this okay? No, it's just whatever they want. And they,
right.
and
they're the ones that stand to make all the money from it.
Yeah,
as
exactly.
well.
And then you got all that. I mean, it's just absolute insanity. It's insanity.
It is. The conflict of interest is unbelievable.
But then, I keep coming back because of the last few years of learning about preventionism. I then come back and it just keeps on reminding me, yeah, but it is crazy, and I have had a lot of fun exposing it, and I'm talking about it now, but I can't do anything about it, right? And there's thousands of things I can't do anything about, right? So therefore, the only thing, really the only thing I can do anything about is me, which is why I do spend quite a lot of my time.
Right, but you're also good at you also are persuasive, in my opinion. Maybe not to everyone.
Yeah, but
in
I'm
a
really
way,
persuasive. But so what? So what?
well, I think that's I think that's a positive.
Well, it may
I
be.
think that's a positive.
Well, it may be a positive, but in my opinion, maybe not the only, but maybe veganism is worth talking to people about if I can persuade a few people to.
I think it all. Not to sound like, say, I don't want to use the word intersectionalist, but I do believe that a lot of these things all intersect. I think, and I would say obviously you don't want to call yourself an anarchist, you don't want to call yourself an antinatalist, but you have anarcho views. It just means no masters or no rulers, right? I'd say being a preventionist falls under an anarcho philosophy of like, why are you going to bring someone here they're going to have to end up serving someone else, right? Just as one of the many issues with bringing people here. So I think we just get, we get caught up on not wanting. I know some people get caught up on not wanting to use labels or whatever, and I just think it's just a way to describe sort of someone's some of the philosophies that people have.
Okay, that's fine. But what I was going to say was, sorry, I was just leading on to, is that to me it all goes back. I think the most I can do, if it's not to just do with looking at my own behavior and my own thinking and trying to improve that, that is a big part of my life. And I think that
sorry, I'm kind of losing you on this end. I don't can you say that again? It's better now.
Yeah, I'm saying that one of the lovely sayings that they have, or there's a sentence that goes something like it. One of the pieces of literature in the 12-step program, it says something like, I need to concentrate less on what needs to be changed in the world than in what needs to be changed in me and my attitudes. Yeah. So I think that's got to be the primary focus, because that's what I can have most influence on, is myself, right? And the same as that, after that, although less so, I feel like at the moment, and I might be wrong about this, but I feel like that there's value in sharing skepticism about procreation. That's the most important thing that I think that I can do. If I can, if I can prevent just a few people from having even just one child less, I think that is valuable, because I think that will be prevention of unnecessary
So,
suffering of not just one,
you
but
put
possibly.
you put value on the prevention of harm,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
And I honestly, my opinion is that is where most morality stems from. Um, I personally view morality as objective. I am in that camp, that natural law camp,
right.
with Passio. I get a little annoyed because Passio is like a little too sure of himself in certain areas. He doesn't talk about antinatalism or preventionism. He doesn't. He's very sure about reincarnation. Uh, I don't know how someone can be so sure about that. It's a little um, unsettling,
I don't even know
but
what it means. I don't really understand what it means. Do you?
reincarnation,
Yeah, what does it
I
mean?
guess the idea that your subjective consciousness will pop up somewhere else after this experience, like this life cycle or something. You'll enter another subjective consciousness. But to me, I mean, there's all kinds of stuff that I find wrong with that whole notion, and I think it's just a part of the way that it's it's really the human brain cannot conceptualize non-existence, so it comes up with all these scenarios. When I've had DMT experiences where like you really face death in with DMT, and it just basically you want to the DMT causes you to be super empathetic, but also wants you to put all your guard down and say, okay, let go of antinatalism, let go of all. You're gonna consciousness is everything, and it's gonna happen no matter what. Almost like what you're saying, like it's out of my control, so why am I even bothering with it? But it gives you this idea that you're gonna that this is samsara. At least this is it for me, but a lot of people I've talked to have had a very similar experience, that this is samsara. You're not gonna, your consciousness
Can
is
I just
not
sorry?
going to escape.
Can I be
Yeah,
cheeky here? Right. One of the
yeah,
tools I find really, really useful, and it makes what you're saying, for me, it makes it much more engaging. Is to instead of using you, just use I or me, because you're talking about a very personal experience, right? And you're saying you, yeah. So that's a bit of a distraction. You've actually frozen on my screen now. I don't know what's going on. You've frozen.
hmm
Oh,
hmm
you're
yeah.
back.
You're
Yeah,
frozen
you're
on my.
back now. Oh, okay.
There you go. Yeah. So instead of saying you,
Yeah, you've been saying you may not be aware, but you've been saying you this and you when you take DMT, you have the experience of great empathy, right? But
right?
what you really mean is
When I,
I, right?
yeah,
And when you say it in the first person, it's just far more engaging, because like you're sharing what your unique experience of taking DMT was like, rather than like having some generalization of you, because you don't know
right.
what happened when I took DMT. If I
No,
took,
I don't.
yeah,
I
I
don't.
might have a completely different experience.
Well,
You want
so
to just share that, what you were saying, but just say it
yeah,
from the
yeah.
first person.
When I have taken DMT, and I guess, yeah, um, I am, I do kind of want to say when one, because just based on the amount of anecdotal evidence that I've
Yeah, just
received from
say,
other
I understand you do,
people. But
but
yeah, when I,
just say I.
yeah,
You can say
yeah,
afterwards. You can say other people have a similar experience, but it's just
right.
so much more. Personally, prefer it when people do that.
No,
It's
fair
yeah,
enough. That's a
it's
good point.
helpful for people. It's
Yeah.
helpful for people listening.
And so yeah, my point was, when I have taken DMT, yeah, that's what it often shows me, is that this is samsara. Let your guard down, just live your life, let go of all these, let go of all these battles, right? And all of your, like, all the idealism. um you're not gonna, you might clean up one, I might clean up one mess, but another one, it's just gonna pop up somewhere else in the universe, right? And that this is all just consciousness experiencing itself in many different forms, and I can't get rid of it. So that's what I feel. But part of that, I believe, is just my brain's inability to conceptualize non-existence. So instead, it gives me this sort of mystical scenario of samsara, and we're all one, and like, my consciousness will never die, like, that's that sort of thing. That's my theory.
But
um
you think you're, I mean, what do you think, that your consciousness will never die? Is that what you're saying?
I don't,
You,
like, obviously I don't
I don't
know,
even
but
know
I
what that
feel,
means
I
exactly.
sense, I can't, I sense that it will cease to exist. That's my opinion.
It will cease, did you say, or will not?
And one of the things that actually
Sorry,
leads me to one of the questions.
you
No, it
froze.
will cease to, I believe it will cease
Oh,
to exist. My consciousness will cease to exist. Yeah. So yeah, my that brings me to a question that I wanted to remember to ask you, which is that, because you do this thing where you offer people a prize for coming up with, like, a logical, moral excuse or reason to create a child, or to create a life.
yeah.
And this might be, like, a little different, but I know you've probably debated people. One of the thing debate the talking points that I get when I'm debating people about antinatalism is they always come up with the what if scenario. you know well, you just don't know. You just don't know where that person's consciousness is. I just don't know where that person's consciousness is. So it's pointless to um you know ruminate on this idea if we don't know. And I always say, well, I don't know that if I don't do something bad to this person, that something worse might actually happen to them. So therefore, I should just do the bad thing, right? Like, that's the way that I've kind of responded to it. But I want to know what your response is, and what the most, if you've come up against that, and what the most common um rebuttal is that you've come up against. Like, what's most people's excuses? Sorry if that was long-winded.
Yeah. Firstly, I need to really understand what you're saying. I'm not sure I do. So you're saying that people say, what if, what?
What if there's there's a soul,
Yeah.
there's consciousness prior to the person being conceived,
Yeah.
and therefore that's why, like, that that would be like that would make antinatalism or preventionism null and void or something.
Okay. Let me just have a little think about it.
Sure.
I mean, again, I invite anyone watching this, whether you're anti-natalist or not, or whatever you are, to just like close your eyes and have a think about this question. And if you want to, you can pause the video and do it for longer, but you may not have ever thought about this before. But I just invite everyone to think about it.
While you're thinking about that, I am going to use the loo very quickly.
No problem.
Oh, all right, I got my headphones here. Go ahead.
So when I offer that prize, yeah, what I try and do is to offer it to somebody who can explain why they themselves, never mind everybody or other people, because that's irrelevant what other people do or don't do. There's no way that me or anybody else is going to be able to have any influence whatsoever on the overwhelming majority of people, right? But with the person standing in front of you that you're talking to, right, what I would like to know from and they come up with that argument, what I would like to know is, okay, so I would ask, does that mean that there are are there another 4 billion souls just waiting to be brought here as the number of people in the population go up? Are they all queuing up? Are there a billion Chinese souls waiting to be brought into China over the next and in other words, I would ask them, I still don't understand why someone, even if that was the case, why would someone bring someone into existence? Why would they do it? What for?
Well, I think the idea is that they already like the theory is that they already exist, right?
Right.
Or the what if they already exist in another form and you're just, I don't know. I mean, obviously, yeah, that's
But
I
that
don't
was
think
what,
I formulated my question to you very well, but should have thought it out more. I guess I just wanted to know what your response was, because that's something that I hear a lot. Actually, I hear it very often.
okay,
When
so
talking about the subject.
one of the things that one of the things about closing your eyes and waiting for 30 seconds to a minute, whatever, for that pause, what it does for me is that when somebody asks a question, that question is often got quite a few assumptions behind it. Yeah. And also the question is obviously made up of words, and words mean different things to different people, right? And so when I meditate for 30 seconds or a minute, yeah, I get some distance from the question, and then I often think, but there's a problem with the question in a way, right? So for me, one of the things I like about developing the idea of something like preventionism, yeah, is that as a skeptic, right? So the idea would be that, I'd ask someone, for example, and you could do the same. Do you value the prevention of unnecessary suffering? Yeah. So if someone came up to me, like you were saying with that argument, I would then ask them, well, do you value the prevention of unnecessary suffering? Yeah. And I'm assuming that most people would say yes, very highly. Yeah. If they say no, okay, that's the end of the discussion then. Because, okay, you don't, I do. And that's why I don't think it should bring someone into existence. But if they say yes, which they're more likely to do, then I would put the onus on them and say, well, okay, given your belief system, yeah, you yourself, right, standing in front of me, yeah, the idea that you're going to impregnate a woman, God knows how many times, yeah, if you believe in the prevention of unnecessary suffering, is it necessary for you to make a woman pregnant? Is that necessary, given your beliefs about there are all these souls up there? Is it necessary for you to do that? Because if it's not, then you are creating unnecessary suffering. And if it is, go ahead, because I'm not going to tell you what is necessary or unnecessary. But I think but I think that's a very powerful way of challenging people, yeah, because you're putting the ball in their court. And if they come up with some sort of contortion, which they might do, yeah, because that's how our minds work, that that says, yes, it's very necessary to bring the person here because their souls are waiting and we're helping them and we're helping bring them here and they're going to come anyway and there's reincarnation anyway, if they come with a whole contortion, fine, fair enough. But at least I've put in their head the importance of preventing unnecessary suffering, which is a concept which I'd never come across until I was 50 years old. Yeah. So and then it sort of sidesteps this whole mental gymnastics game, philosophy game about whether it's right or wrong. And you can always, the mind can always find ways of weaving around it and make like the one you're talking about. Yeah. So it avoids, by not calling myself an antinatalist, I can get agreement from people that the prevention of unnecessary suffering is a good idea, and then ask them, well, tell me, you personally, is you making a woman pregnant necessary? And if so, why is it necessary? And they'll come up with some reasons, and then you'll be able to challenge those, probably, because if they say, because it's really important for me to have a family, yeah, then I will say, well, yeah, but you don't have to create your own children to have a family. There's lots of other ways you can do that. Yeah. Or they say, because it gives me meaning. Or they say, whatever. That it's, they may or may not be able to come up with something to say it's necessary. But do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, and I think that's like a great perspective, and I hadn't really heard it put that way before. And I think I am going to play with that a bit when I am discussing this with people, because often it's what I had been saying is, where's the evidence for that, right? For what they're saying, and their response is, oh, well, where's your evidence that that's not the case? And I'm like, I don't know how to argue with that exactly, other than I should fear the flying spaghetti monster because where's my evidence that they don't exist, other than I haven't seen them yet. So, like,
Yeah, and that's the beauty of the pausing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the beauty of the pausing, and I forget to do it all the time, right? But the beauty of the pausing is that you see that when they're asking that question, they've like taken you down a dead end, right? When then they come up with that nonsense, right? About proof, yeah. But if you take a pause, then you can see that. You might be able to see that. And so many questions are like that, right? And one of the things I learned with the police, one of the useful things that I learned with the police is that the master asks the questions, the slave answers them. And now you play a game with the police, of asking questions. Yeah. And it's a game I lose sometimes because they are quite well trained. Yeah. So I ask them a question. They often come back with another question. And they ask me a question and I ask them a question. Yeah. And they're very well trained. They don't even, it's not a conscious thing. They're so well trained, it's right, that they don't answer the question. They keep asking the question, So I might say, well, so what's your name and address? And I say, well, am I obliged to give you your name and address? Sorry, what's your name and address, please? What's your name and address? Am I obliged to give you your name and address? Oh, you don't want to give your name and address? Why don't you want to? Right? So they're asking a question, right? And then you've got to respond with the question back to them. So, and I'm not saying this from a manipulation point of view, but it's just a very powerful, it's a very powerful tool, really.
Well, at this point, it's like a survival technique in our society,
Yeah.
And I'm glad that you mentioned that, because I completely, I didn't even like think to talk to you about your interactions with the police, which is a very important topic, especially for anyone who watches your videos. They see you've had a lot of experience doing that. Um, and it's just sort of, has it just been trial and error for you, or did you kind of study that a bit?
Yeah. I mean, no, I just learned from experience, a lot of experience.
Mm,
Yeah, I learned from experience, and I also learned. I mean, I learned from certain people on YouTube. I learned from. I've already mentioned Lark and Rose, so I've learned from that as well. But yeah, I didn't really do any specific training. It's just I've just picked it up along the way. I've also had like training in Talmud, learning Talmud, which is a very convoluted, question-based kind of textual study. I think it's now I look back at it and think, oh, I can't believe how much time I spent on that really strange and huge body of work. But whatever, I did what I did in the past with the best of my ability, to the best of my ability. And one of the things you get trained in that type of thinking is just to ask a lot of questions. So I
mm,
suppose that helped as well.
mm. Yeah, it's I find it's just so, it's almost like magic, um watching some of the videos where you're talking to the police, because of using that Socratic method, and like how they're they really can't, if they really can't get anything out of you, um they're kind of powerless in many ways. Although I don't know, maybe it's different in the UK. In the US, there's a lot of, with the police, a lot of them sort of act first and you deal with them in court later kind of scenarios.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's like that in the UK, but
Well, it is.
you
It can
know,
be. It can. But again, it's funny because I did monetize my films for a couple of years, and I got a little bit from it. It wasn't a huge amount, but I realized that I had to keep producing police films in order to make the money, because they're the ones that attracted so much of the interest. But
right.
my interest really moved away from that and moved towards veganism and then towards antinatalism or preventionism. And those films don't get so much interest because they really, for a lot of people, it's very difficult to watch that, even if they agree with it or partially agree with it. But so I stopped, I stopped doing that. And since, again, in a way, I haven't really talked about this so much, but since I stumbled across the ethical questions and the skepticism towards life, I suppose, and towards the creation of life. Yeah, since I came across the skepticism, everything else has like really paled into insignificance. And I look back at those police videos, and yes, they were cute, and yes, okay, I got one over some policemen, but I mean, really, was I not picking on low-hanging fruit? And
well, I mean, you went to court, you had and you defended yourself, correct?
so what?
Well,
So
that's a pretty intimidating.
yes, okay,
That's taking a
I
risk. That's
understand,
taking a
and
big
I
risk.
understand that, and given whatever I knew at the time and whatever, yes, it's all right. But what I'm saying is that since I came to the idea of skepticism of life and life itself, and of life and the creation of life itself, and since I became to the understanding that actually the root cause of all problems is sex, basically, right? um, that leads then to reproduction, that leads to all problems. Yeah.
Do
The
you think that
police,
if
the
Yeah, go
police
ahead.
and what I do with the police and what they do, which I can't do anything about anyway, all of that is because of sex. All of that is because of sex. It's because of the sex our parents had, right? That brought us here, that ended one of us being the victim in this particular case, whether, of the police, and another of us being the policeman, one of us
Right,
being the rapist and the other of us being raped, one of us
right,
being the psychopath and the other of us being, whatever. One of us being a politician and the other being a slave. So, so it all pales, all that stuff that I've done just pales into insignificance. And I kind of look back at it and think, oh, I'm not sure that I occasionally think I should just take it all off YouTube because it's such a waste of time for people to watch it compared to the question of sex and reproduction.
right. Do you think that there's anything wrong with sex sans the reproduction?
Okay, I'm going to have a little think about that.
Sure.
And again, I invite everybody to notice, how quickly you might have been tempted to answer that question. Maybe a thought would have come into your mind. Like, do you think that when I ask you, do you think, viewer, that there's anything wrong with sex outside of reproduction? What the first thought that comes to mind? And then just meditate for 30 seconds to a minute and see if the quality of your thoughts is improved or if anything interesting comes up. What do you mean by wrong?
I mean, I guess well, seeing as how correct me if I'm wrong, you view procreation as a, I guess I don't know if you would use the word wrong, but as a problem or as a negative. It's a form of harm, I guess, is what you're trying to say, right?
Yeah.
So then I guess I would
Unnecessary
phrase
and unnecessary harm.
unnecessary harm.
Yeah.
I would phrase the question, do you believe sex can cause, or is sex a unnecessary harm? Can it be? I mean, obviously it could be, but just on its own, in a vacuum or between two consenting people, is there a harm that comes from that?
Is there a harm that comes from it? You see, what I think the problem is with your question, if you'll
Yeah.
allow me,
Sure.
and what comes up for me is that I think that a lot of Yuval Noah Harari, who I really have gone off actually recently, but he speaks about stories a lot, yeah, and about how everything is really is about stories that we tell. About money is just a story, you know, the state is a story, corporation is a story, our whole lives are just full of stories, and it's the narrative around sex. There's a narrative around sex, and I like to I like to sort of offer a different narrative around sex. So for me, when I think about it, I just think like how absolutely awful it is that the act of creating unnecessary suffering, yeah, that 5-second feeling feels so good, and and what comes out of that is a huge amount of suffering, yeah, from the time the child is born until the end. And I'm, of course, fully aware that for many people, including myself at this time, certainly at this time, and for probably most of my life, it also caused a lot of joy, happiness, okayness, yeah, probably more for me, although there are problems even with that. But that's not the point, right? Because the suffering, if it wasn't necessary to bring me into existence, then all the suffering that I have is just completely unnecessary. And so is the joy unnecessary, because I didn't need to be brought here, right? And so the idea that the creator, if this was created consciously, it's so mean. It's just so mean to set a human being, or, you know, let's leave animals out this for the moment, but it's the same applies to them. But, you know, that it feels so good, and that your mind, the way the mind works during sex, and, you know, I only really understood this properly after I come across the skepticism towards procreation, right? We don't even know the basics around sex, right? But the way the mind works during sex is that there are, I think, 4 or 5 hormones that are released, or substances that are released, one of which turns off your logical mind, the logical part of your mind. It's so cruel, right? It's cruel to the person that's being created, right? And it's cruel to the people that are creating it, even though they may not know it, right? And it's completely like, it's, you know, it's like DNA. It's as if DNA, you know, doesn't care, which is true in a way. I know it's funny to speak about it in anthropomorphic terms, but it's like DNA doesn't care whether, you know, whether you make a good parent or a bad parent, whether you be a horrible, evil abuser or not, whether your child is well or not, mentally or physically, or whether you've got good genes or not, whether you're in a raw zone or not, just doesn't care. It's just like determined, and uses this lovely feeling for a few seconds, yeah, to create all these problems, and you know, and it's just so mean. Do you know what I mean? I don't know if you know what I mean by that, you know. So I'm not saying that it's a fantastic feeling, yeah. It's a beautiful feeling, and it can be used in a very, very connecting way, yeah. I think, and paradoxically, maybe at the same time, and I'm not, you know, I enjoy it. I enjoy the connection. I enjoy the feeling, but you know, paradoxically, at the same time, you know, I think it's important that a different narrative is shared. And you know, when I've asked hundreds of people, why is it that the act of creating a human feels so good? Yeah. Have you, I mean, when did you first, or have you ever thought of that, or when did you first think of that? Did you? Because most people don't know.
Do you mean the act of creating a human as just in having intercourse, or even the whole idea of the person being pregnant or something like that?
No. Hold on a second. Sorry, my son has just walked in the room, and he wanted to say something. He's been listening to the conversation.
Sure, yeah.
No, I haven't been listening to the conversation. I've got better things to do.
Oh.
I came in here to tell you that the daughter which we had 25 years ago, which you shouldn't have, you now have a responsibility and a duty to do everything you can to make sure her well-being is completely intact. And if that means shutting the fuck up or going elsewhere, then that works. Love you. Not
Okay.
you shut the fuck up. Hey.
What's that?
No, I never.
What, this guy here? I'm speaking. There's only one.
You're all very loud.
It's too loud for her.
Obviously.
Oh, she's trying to work.
Yeah, do you not hear her just screaming?
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know what she was. I didn't know what she was talking about. Okay.
So close the door. That's what she wanted.
No, she wanted
Okay. I'll move outside again. That was an interesting intervention because, you know, he's right. I think he's got a point, my son. Yeah, and I do.
You articulated it perfectly, in my opinion.
And I think he's got a point. So I was asking you, have you considered why sex is so pleasurable? Why is it pleasurable?
I mean, I see now I have a bias. Well, from watching your videos, I have ideas implanted in my head, which I don't know if what's the word? I don't know if it was, inception on my part or not. But yeah, I mean, I would assume it's just sort of to make procreation more desirable, right?
Yeah, it's a trick.
I don't know what it's like. What came first?
Well, it's an evolutionary trick. It's a trick. It's a scam. It's
right.
The ultimate scam, right? It's all designed specifically to get human beings to procreate. It's to trick them, because if it didn't feel really, really good, then most of us probably wouldn't be here.
Right. How many people would
terrible
would create?
I mean, what does that mean to you now, knowing that? Yeah. Doesn't that like just shed a different light on sex?
It certainly does, but it also, I mean, I feel like I kind of think of it as what Bruce Lee used to say was, no way is way, no form is form, right? Flow like water. And we scammed creation back, or scammed nature back with vasectomies, right? And women can also get sterilized.
I mean, that's fine. This is what I'm saying. It's not about wrong or right. What it's about saying is having the consciousness to understand how awful and mean the whole thing is set up. It's just so, it has no, it's like the universe has no regard for and no compassion, doesn't care one iota about the child that's going to be born or about the parents. It's just there. Sex is just there, just to trick everybody into, and half the pregnancies in America apparently are by mistake. I mean, it's just, it's just awful. Yeah,
oh, it is.
And I think that narrative should be drummed home. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, that's, I'm in, obviously it's a hard thing for a lot of people to connect with. But there's, at least where I'm at in Florida, there's a lot of very new agey kind of crowd, right? And they're also very right wing, and they kind of buy into this whole New World Order, depopulation, and they think it's all part of that whole thing. And they're
That
like,
right wing, though, that's not right wing. That's just conspiratorial.
well, it is, but it tends to pop up a lot more. And I guess I shouldn't blanketly say, but there are a lot of people like that down here, and they are more apt to say, okay, well, that's part of the Bill Gates's. And I'm not saying that there isn't a conspiracy of some kind. Maybe there is, but like, they don't want to look at it they don't want to look at they don't want to deconstruct it all, right? They want to just say, no, that's the New World Order thing agenda. We have to be pro-natalist now. And my whole thing is, well, how do you know that the real conspiracy is that they want you to think that there's a depopulation agenda so that you'll be rebellious and create more tax cattle for them? It's like a reverse psychology kind of thing, right? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I've come across that, and I just find it, very amusing in some ways. It's like, just because Bill Gates, I mean, whether Bill Gates, I mean, I just think Bill Gates is just basically is an actor, right? He's a front face, right? He's an actor, and he's actually,
why wouldn't they have got a better actor though?
Because he's a brilliant actor. What are you talking about? He's a genius. Most people don't know he's an actor, right? That's what makes a good actor, right? So he's a brilliant actor. I mean, I love his genius. I mean, what he wears, for example. This is not just some, he's not just putting on. That's all part of the act, right? He's a brilliant actor, right?
So he's an actor the way that like any like a major politician is an actor.
Yeah,
like obviously all the presidents are actors.
Yeah,
in my opinion, I think they're actors.
Yeah, absolutely. They're just actors, right? And it's so funny, people getting angry with an actor, right? Why would you get angry with an actor, right? So these people are getting angry because Bill Gates once said that by vaccinating people, they're going to get the world population down, right? And they make that mean that the vaccines are going to kill all those people, right? But actually, no, I think what he said was, and it doesn't matter anyway, because he's just an actor and he's just reading a script basically, and he's just or sharing his opinions. What some bloke sharing his opinion, who cares, right? And even if he is a bad guy, and even if he he's got some conspiracy and whatever, I mean, I think it's weird that some non-medical guy is allowed to just
it's just insane.
Weird, right? And he just speaks such nonsense. I don't take any notice of him, right? But
not that the medical guys are any better, right? But at least
what?
Not that the medical professionals are any better. I say
absolutely.
professionals.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, you're absolutely right there. Thanks for pointing that out. Right, but but the thing is, if he has an idea that the world population we should try and reduce the world population, that doesn't make the idea automatically bad. That's bad thinking on behalf of those people, that are into this new world order, right? That's just a logical fallacy. Bill Gates is a bad guy, therefore every idea he has is bad. It's ridiculous.
Right.
It doesn't add on, right? So, and I think, by the way, that if you ask the right questions, you'll find that most people in their right minds are denatalist, right? Most people would think that there are, like, for example, in the ultra-Orthodox Jewish community, they're crazy. They have like 9-10 children. Many people would believe that that's out of order. That's not necessary. That really isn't necessary. Many people will believe that some people, that the people with serious genetic disorders should be dissuaded from reproducing, right? Yeah, some people will think that. And then there'll be other reasons, or for all sorts of other reasons, that some people will think that, so, the idea that this is eugenics and all that nonsense and depopulation, you know, again, this is all, and the other thing about that is that all takes the discussion into the realm of you know, highfalutin philosophy and ideas that are, who cares? I don't care what he believes. I don't care what 99% of the world believes. I don't have any influence on them. I'll never meet them. I don't speak the language of most of them, right? But all I can do is have a discussion with the person in front of me or the person watching the film, and, you know, keep on focusing on, well, let's talk about you. Yeah, let's talk about you and maybe the people that you know. Yeah, you know, is there any good reason for you to create a more life, you know, and just stick to that, and stick to asking, is there, what is the reason for you to do it? And I haven't
mentioned
a good one.
You mentioned eugenics, and I've heard you say once on a live stream that in a way anyone who, you know, voluntarily procreates is some form of eugenicist. Can you just elaborate on that real quick?
Yeah, sure. Nature is, by its very nature, evolution is all about, is very similar, isn't it? It's like, if I choose a woman based on, you know, on how she looks and her intelligence and, you know, her generosity or whatever it is, yeah, then that's what I'm trying to do. I'm choosing that woman as opposed to another woman. Or if a woman chooses a man, she's gonna make a choice to get the best man so that they can create the best children. That is eugenics. Yeah. Then, you know, we don't just go, you know, we don't just assume, right. I mean, if you're against eugenics, then you should then you should say, well, you know, a man should choose anybody. Should just, you know, why don't you choose that person? You shouldn't choose that person because they're better. That's eugenics. So yeah, if you choose to procreate, you are basically, that's how it works.
Well, I find that really interesting, you know, because there's just so many people I've met who come up against antinatalism with, oh, it's eugenics, it's ableism, it's undertones of racism. I don't know where they come up with this stuff, but I don't want to overstay my welcome with you here, because it's, you know, it's been like you said, it's been a long interview, and I really appreciate your time. You know, anything else you want to leave us with, or anything that you think we missed here?
Let me have a think about that as well.
Yeah.
No, I think I'm done.
All right. Well, I'm so grateful that you gave me your time. Um, I would like to hear some of your music someday, by the way. And also, I noticed that you do wear some nice shirts sometimes, and this is
This
like,
one says,
yeah,
ex-serial killer, meat eater.
um
Sadly, I realized after I made it that actually I'm not really an ex-serial killer. I'm still a serial killer, even if I'm vegan.
because you've procreated.
Well, A, because I procreated, but B, because animals are killed in agriculture. So
Right.
just
Although,
maybe.
hopefully we can all move. Hopefully the system will move to a veganic agriculture practice, which will at least harm a lot less animals. But yeah, I was just gonna say, I would love to send. I design and produce my own line of clothing. I'll shoot you an email with some of that. If you ever see anything you like, I want to send you something.
Oh, lovely.
But
great.
yeah.
Some new t-shirts, yeah. I've
All
actually
right.
just ordered a t-shirt. Someone just made me a t-shirt. Hasn't arrived yet, but yeah, as a gift, which I ordered basically. It says, "Do not resuscitate."
Oh, that's good. I don't. Well, I don't know. I mean, depends on the circumstance, but yeah, I do both dressy like button down shirts and and I have started doing t-shirts with graphics and stuff. So, but yeah, we'll it was great talking to you. Thank you so much.